Today we are going to discuss about Unit 1 Herbs, Raw Materials to Herbal Drug Product. According to WHO guidelines, herbs are defined as a crude plant material such as leaves, flowers, fruits, seeds, etc., which may be entire, fragmented, or powdered. Coming to herbal materials or medicinal plant materials are either whole plants or parts of medicinal plants in the crude state. Herbal medicine is defined as a usage of herbs and herbal preparations to maintain health, to prevent, alleviate, or cure disease. Herbal preparations are the basis for finished herbal products and may include comminute or powdered herbal materials. Finished herbal products or herbal medicinal products contain active substances exclusively herbal drugs or herbal drug preparations. Medicinal plant is the plant either grown in wild or cultivated used for medicinal properties. Herbs have been used since prehistoric times, evidenced by Losec's cave paintings. According to the archaeologists, man had been in relationship with plants goes back around 30,000 to 50,000 years, or maybe even longer. Man had a long and a loving relationship with herbs. Ancient Romans, Greeks crowned their leaders with dill and laurel. The Romans used dill to purify the air. In the 15th BC, Hippocrates, the famous Greek physician, listed out approximately 400 herbs in common use. Around 65 AD, Pedanius Dioscorides, a Greek physician, wrote De Materia Medica, in which he described the medicinal issues of many herbs, and this book is considered one of the most influential herbal books even today. In the Middle Ages, herbs are used to preserve the food. Back during the days of the Roman Empire, the only medicines available were based on herbs or other natural remedies. Hippocrates used anisette to treat coughs, a treatment employed even in the year 2007. Paracelsus revived the first century doctrine of signatures. According to the doctrine of signatures, every herb has its own sign. Herbalism and medicine were essentially the same practice. Herbalism and medicine were essentially the same practice. Most of the conventional medicines are based on herbal or natural basis or the artificial copying of a natural process. For instance, atropine, which is used to treat irregular heartbeats from belladonna leaves, colchicine, used for gout from autumn crocus, digoxin, the most widely prescribed heart medication from foxglove, morphine and codeine, potent narcotics from the opium poppy, quinine, a drug which treats malaria from cinchona bark, vinblastine and vincristine, which are anti-cancer drugs, commonly called as periwinkle. The traditional use of herbs as medicine varies from culture to culture. In Asia, particularly India and China, their curative virtues have always enjoyed great respect, and herbs plays an important role in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicines. In 2004, the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine started to fund clinical trials to find out the effectiveness of herbal medicine. The curative effects of many herbs have now been scientifically proven. These herbal applications were either in their natural state or in man-made active compounds. In fact, more than 25% of our modern drugs contain plant extracts as active ingredients, and these days herbal preparations can be found in stores prepared in a variety of forms like tablets, powders, or creams, etc. Herbal materials or medicinal plant materials are either whole plants or parts of medicinal plants in the crude drug state. Selection of herbal materials for research. There are several criteria which will be very useful in selection of plants for research. Ethnobotany. Observations in field, taxonomic view, and random selection. Let us talk about ethnobotany. The selection of plants can be done with the help of documented history made by traditional healers. Traditional knowledge serves as a powerful search engine which helps the researcher to investigate in the area of medical conditions of his interest. Around the world, civilizations used plants for medicinal purposes have their own degree of documentation. Indian Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine are particularly well documented. Next, about observations in field. Researchers' observation in field are valuable for the selection of plant species for testing. Plants grown in environmental stress area where the area is dominated with the help of insects, fungi, etc. can be able to withstand as they contain phytochemical which will protect themselves against pest. The next third parameter is taxonomic view. Many plants are unknown to have therapeutic value, may be related to other species known to be having a medicinally important phytochemical. The secondary metabolites in plants were regarded as family or genus specific. Hence, investigation of species which are closely related to those known to have medicinal properties may detect similar bioactivities in these species. For example, tropane alkaloids belongs to Solanaceae. So the next criteria is random selection. Random testing results in rousing new discoveries. Many emerging diseases and medical conditions like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, HIV, and many cancers were not a major health concerns for our ancestors. Hence, early pharmacognosis were not exposed to have a research on these type of diseases. Often, allopathic medicine is insufficient in the treatment of these type diseases. Hence, random testing may provide new insights and ultimately results in better treatments for these type of diseases and conditions. So let us talk about authentication of plant material. So authentication or identification of herbal material is very important prospect. So if there are wide variety how we can authenticate. The very first way is if we have to check whether there is any pharmacopoeia monograph. If it is yes, the herbal material must have to comply with all identification tests which is stated in any national pharmacopoeia like organoleptic, chemical and morphological tests. If there is no such monograph is established still yet, so then there are different options we have to opt. First, we have to compare either with an authoritative literature source, or we can compare them whatever the raw material we are having, so we can authenticate with the reference specimen. The herbal material must be compared with in all the aspects like macroscopical, microscopical, chromatographical procedures and chemical reactions. A suitable qualified person must perform a comparative analysis between the consigned herbal material with the authenticated reference in specimen. See, in authenticated reference specimen, in this case, a qualified person have to authenticate the plant material in this regard. So the next one is authentication of herbal material. It's a very critical step for successful and reliable clinical applications of herbal materials. The first step in authentication is to determine the botanical origin and its scientific Latin binomial name. The Ocher specimens should be made for all plants in the study. The Ocher should contain full collection details of field and suppliers. The orchard should be housed in a publicly accessible herbarium. The scientific name should be used for each plant is determined by cues Medicinal Plant Name Service Portal MPNS, World Checklist of Selected Plant Families WCSP, and the Plant List TPL. The sample of collected material should be kept as a voucher sample in a herbarium or a research institute for future references. The plant material must comply with all identification tests stated in monograph in respective national pharmacopoeia. So the next case is identification of herbal material. Identification of herbal material is carried out by examining the macroscopical, microscopical features, chromatographic procedures and chemical reactions with respect to national pharmacopoeia. So here is one of the example which was stated in the table regarding macroscopical method. So here we are going to compare the two different species under the same genus. All the macroscopical characteristics were typically different. The herbal materials examined for macroscopical characteristics such as shape, size, color, texture, surface characteristics, fracture characteristics, odor, taste, and these characteristics are compared with that of standard reference material. So that is how a macroscopical method have to be carried out. So the next aspect is microscopical method. So the herbal material was examined for microscopical characteristics like structural, cellular and internal tissue features of botanicals. It is used to identify and differentiate two similar herbals. Microscopical method is a convenient and quick. An example is stated here. So where we just discussed about earlier two different species and under the same genus. Likewise, here is also the same genus and but two different species. So both the upper epidermis and as well as mesophyll layer is totally different species to species, and their distinct characteristics were very much dissimilar when compared at the species level. So the next method is physicochemical methods. Physicochemical parameters investigation includes total ash, water soluble ash, acid insoluble ash and sulfated ash. These values of the individual herbal materials are compared with the standard values of Indian pharmacopoeia, and thus the identity can be ascertained. So for example, rhizomes of Gingiber officinalis having the physical parameters of all these parameters, these are the limits for Gingiber officinalis which is stated in the table. About chemometric and spectral methods. Chromatography and spectroscopy techniques are the most commonly used methods in standardization of herbal medicine. But the herbal system is difficult to analyze because of the presence of multiple constituents. Various techniques like high performance liquid chromatography, diode array detection, gas chromatography, mass spectrum analysis, capillary electrophoresis, diode array detection, HPLC MS, HPLC NMR gives a complicated data which cannot be evaluated easily. Chemometrics is the application of mathematical and statistical techniques to retrieve more information from the chromatographic data. It is a rapid and simple method since no chemical treatment of samples is required. It is a leading tool among the scientific communities towards faster analysis and shorter product development time. Let us see about the chromatographic methods. Chromatographic methods like HPLC, capillary electrophoresis, gas chromatography and thin layer chromatography are the most commonly used analytical methods for the chemical analysis of herbal medicines. So coming to the part of TLC, it is the most common choice for the analysis of herbs to provide first characteristic fingerprints of herbs. The advantage of using TLC is to construct the fingerprint of herbal medicines or its simplicity. Not only simplicity, versatility, high velocity, specific sensitivity, simple sample preparation and its economy. Thus, it is a convenient method to determine the quality and possible adulteration of herbal products. And this is one of the example which was illustrated in the table regarding the paper TLC and gas for the identification of alkaloids, example tobacco. So the next is high performance liquid chromatography. It is a popular method for the analysis of herbal medicines because of ease method and is not limited by the volatility or stability of the sample compound. In general, HPLC can be used to analyze almost all the compounds in herbal medicines, and one of the few examples it was illustrated in this particular table. So the next parameter is gas chromatography. Gas chromatography especially used for the identification of volatile oil, as it gives a reasonable fingerprint and can be used to identify the plant. The extraction of volatile oil is relatively straightforward and can be standardized, and the components can be readily identified by using GCMS analysis. The advantages of GC are its high sensitivity of detection of all the volatile chemical compounds. DNA based tests. Under DNA based test, DNA fingerprint analysis, it is an important tool in herbal drug standardization which is useful for identification of genuine drug from substituted or adulterated drug. DNA based test or hybridization method based methods, polymer like PCR as we know, polymerase chain reaction based methods and sequence based methods. Processing of herbal raw material. So the next aspect is processing of herbal raw material. Processing is a unique method of preparation of herbal materials which ensures the quality, safety and efficacy of herbal materials in a clinical wise. So processing, what we can say, processing, under processing of herbal raw materials, processing of herbs into herbal materials, processing of herbal materials into preparations and materials to dosage forms. So the processing of herbal materials serves in several purposes. So the very first one is neutralization of toxicity and diminishing side effects. When we talk about neutralization about toxicity, a detoxifying process is particularly very important for certain medicinal plants which contains toxic or undesirable chemical components. They must be subjected to remove the unwanted substances. Pre-treatment processes like steaming and frying, the heat sensitive toxic components will be degraded. In process like sweating and aging results in enzymatic degradation of toxic substances. For example, raw aconite tuber contains significant amounts of alkaloid aconitin subjected for boiling in order to hydrolyze aconitin into less toxic substances. Cascara bark have to be aged for minimum period of 1 year before use, which helps in oxidation reaction so that strong laxative hydroxyl anthracene glycosides are get converted into oxidized compounds of lower laxative potencies. Modification of therapeutic properties. The next criteria is modification of therapeutic properties. Specific processing of herbal materials will alter their therapeutic properties. For example, raw form of rhubarb possesses purgative action, but after processing, the purgative action is diminished and the processed rhubarb is used as an anti-inflammatory agent. Unprocessed raw Rahmania root is used to treat fever, hypertension and skin eruptions, but after processing by cooking in wine, it is used for tonic aminogogue, so which is actually cures menstrual disorders and anti-aging. Enhancing efficacy and reinforcing therapeutic effects. The next parameter is enhancing efficacy and reinforcing therapeutic effects. The therapeutic efficacy of herbal materials can be augmented by specific methods of preparation. So for example, pain relieving property of a Corydallis rhizomes is increased when they are stir fried with rice vinegar. Honey treated ephedra possesses stronger anti-tussive, anti-asthma properties than the unprocessed ephedra. Processing of herbs into herbal materials includes three major categories. They are primary processing, secondary processing and special processing. Coming for primary processing, it includes garbling, washing, blanching, leaching and drying. Primary processing includes, as we said, comminution. The desired medicinal plant part is processed into a form which is ready to use as a starting source material for the production of a finished herbal products. As we know, coming to the first parameter regarding garbling, it is the prime step process in order to ensure the purity and cleanliness of the medicinal plant material. Garbling is a process involving removal of dirt, foreign substances, discarding damaging parts, separation of unwanted plant parts such as unwanted root bark from the roots. Garbling may be carried out by mechanical means or by hand operation. Next one is washing. After sorting, the medicinal plant materials should be cleansed well to remove remained soil, dirt, dust and other unwanted matters, especially roots, rhizomes and tubers, are commonly washed with clean water. Care must be taken that medicinal plant materials must not soak for a long period of time and frequently change of water has to be done. So the next one is blanching. Certain raw medicinal plant materials were subjected to blanching process. Blanching is a process of boiling the drug in water for a brief period of time but not fully cooked. The heating process may improve storage life of the processed materials by gelatinizing the starch and prevents contamination, and it also facilitates removal of seed coat if necessary. So the next parameter under primary processing is leaching. Herbal materials were made leached by subjecting them against running water so that some purities can be removed. A control over the length of leaching time is necessary to prevent excessive loss of other ingredients. So the last parameter for primary processing is drying. Unless used in the fresh state, the raw medicinal plant materials must be dried after sorting and washing. Drying ensures good keeping qualities, reduces damage from mold and other microbial infestation. It also avoids tissue deterioration and phytochemical alteration caused by the actions of enzymes and microbial organisms. The final moisture content for dried herbal materials should generally be below 12%. Drying involves three major aspects, namely control of temperature, humidity and airflow. It is carried out based on the nature of raw medicinal plant material and appearance of the final form. Based on the type of medicinal plant material, the drying conditions are chosen. Generally, raw medicinal plant materials are most often dried by sun drying, shade drying, or by artificial heat. Sun drying. Mostly the plant materials were dried under direct sunshine. The duration of the drying process depends on the physical structure of the medicinal plant material and climatical conditions. The medicinal plant material should be spread out in thin layers on drying frames and kept away from possible contaminations. A uniform must be drying achieved within the shortest period of time to avoid mold formation. So the next one is shade drying. The medicinal plant materials were shade dried to avoid direct exposure to sunlight. Here the dry process is slow, but it is preferred for the minimal loss of leaves and flowers and also preserves most of the volatile and aromatic compounds from being evaporated. So the other process of drying is artificial heat. It is more rapid, especially it is necessary on rainy days or in regions of high humidity. Care should be taken that overheating may lead to an excessive loss of the volatile components or decomposition of chemical ingredients. The secondary processing may vary from one herbal material to another, which depends on the character of the active ingredients and as well as the therapeutic target. These processes are referred to as specific processing. The secondary processing procedures are cutting, sectioning and comminution. Coming for this particular cutting, sectioning and comminution, the herbal materials are processed by cutting or sectioning into convenient sizes and shapes and are pulverized into powder form. So for example, white ginseng root pieces and their powder form is prepared from dried roots of Panax ginseng. The next character a point is aging and sweating. Aging is the process to store the herbal materials for a period of time after harvestment of plant. Depending on the specific herbal material, the process of aging varies. During aging, excessive water is evaporated and enzymatic reactions may occur to alter the chemical composition of the herbal material. For example, Cascara sagrada bark is subjected for aging at least 1 year prior to use in medicinal preparations in order to avoid strong irritating effects which may cause vomiting and upset stomach. The next point is regarding sweating. Sweating is the process where the herbal materials are kept at a temperature of 45 to 65 degrees Celsius at high humidity for a period of time, that is from 1 week to a couple of months depending upon the plant species. The herbal materials are rolled in woolen blankets where the materials will undergo hydrolytic or oxidative process. For example, vanilla beans subjected for repeated sweating by keeping them in between swollen blankets in the sun during day and packed in wool covered boxes at night time for about 2 months so that it loses up to 8% of weight and takes on characteristic odor and color. So the next point is about baking or roasting. The baking or roasting is a process of a dry heat by using indirect or diffused heat where the herbal materials were placed in heating device and embedded in magnesium silicate to ensure even heating. The temperature varies from one herbal material to other. For example, processing of nutmeg root was roasted with bran. So the next parameter is boiling or steaming. In this process, it is a process of cooking the plant materials in water or liquid solvents like vinegar, wine, milk, or animal urine. It helps in softening plant tissues to denature enzymes. The excipients which are used during this process, they will get absorbed into the plant tissues and becomes an integral part of the processed herbal materials. For example, Polygonum multiform roots are steamed in presence of black bean decoction to enhance the tonic effects. A rhizome of Acorus calamus is boiled in cow's urine to enhance its anticonvulsant activity. So the next parameter is stir frying. It is the process in which the herbal materials are subjected for heating in frying pan and continuously stirred for a period of time until the external color changes. Adjuncts like wine, vinegar, honey, saline and ginger juice are also added if required. For even heating on the surface of the herbal materials, sand, bran, clay, etc. can be admixed with the herbal material during stir frying. So for example, licorice root is stir fried with honey for the preparation of decoction. Likewise, fresh ginger is stir fried with sand until the surface color turns brown. So the next parameter is in secondary processing is fumigation. It is fumigation of herbal materials is by sulfur dioxide was done actually after post harvestment. Fumigation is carried out to preserve color, to improve appearance, bleaching, to prevent the growth, molds, etc. As to avoid undesirable residues in herbal materials, these types of fumigations are avoided as much as possible and care should be taken that limits on sulfur residue were maintained. So the next thing is special processing. The generally primary and secondary processing is insufficient to reduce their adverse effects. So hence special processing procedures before they can be have to be done before they can be used as therapeutic purposes. These special processing procedures were required for some of the medicinal plant materials. So it includes detoxification, enhancement or modification of therapeutic substances. So let us talk about detoxification first. Aconite root is specially processed by boiling in water to reduce the content of aconitin and related alkaloids which are toxic. Likewise, the another example, Nux vomica seeds are specially processed by frying or boiling in water or cow's milk or ghee to reduce the content of its toxic ingredients, strychnine and brucin. Seeds of Xanthium communis is processed by stir frying for to degrade the toxic proteins. Enhancement or modification of therapeutic properties, the next criteria under special processing. Here, fresh ginseng is covered to red ginseng by repeated steaming results in altered pharmacological actions. So the next one is about documentation. Every part of processing of herbal material has to be documented, and this particulars of documentation should include botanical name, vernacular name of the medicinal plant, plant parts have to be, what are the plant parts have to be processed, everything have to be documented, where the plant is cultivated, so that is why you have to give the details about the site and what is the time of harvesting, what is the time of the collection of the plant materials have to be quoted in documentation particularly. And whenever it goes for preservation, so what is the batch number, and is there any other identification code, and where the materials have to be purchased, and what are the receipts, dates of the receipts is very important, and how the processing of the materials have to be done, and how by how many days the process have to be completed, everything have to be documented, and who is the charge of the person during processing of plant materials have to be noted. General processes of the plant material like drying, washing, cutting, everything, whatever. If in the case of like drying, the time and what is the temperature and what is the size of the herbal material have to be noted down, and you have to take the weight before and after processing of the plant material, so that the gross weight have to be noted out. So, and if any special processing was done, you have to quite it whether what are the different special processing for the was done for the plant material. And you also have to include in documentation regarding details of procedures like equipments, what are the different equipments used, what are the different steps operations were involved, what is the amount and quality grade of the auxiliary substances like wine, vinegar, and other substances such as sand, bran used, how we control the temperature, length of process time, and after processing steps like cooling, drying, cutting, and other relevant information have to be documented very pakkali. And if there is any deviations, it have to be quoted and noted. If any modifications was done to the master formula have to be noted. In process control, for example, organoleptic changes of the plant material after processing, such as change in color, shape, texture, odor, and what are the quality control parameters, assay results where appropriate of active ingredients or chemical reference, everything happens